I'm really excited about this episode of the Church Answers podcast.
Are you really?
I am. I love worship.
Yes, you
I
do.
absolutely. It is. Um, I think to the detriment of my worship director. I love worship. I let him know before he took the role. I said, worship is always under the microscope for me. And so I just want you to know, as you take this role, that I will be more involved in this ministry more than any other ministry of the church.
Derek's got the disposition to handle you.
And he said, I love it. I love it. He said, let's do it. I love worship. I sit in all of our worship planning meetings. We talk about direction. We talk about song choice. I'm probably more involved. I don't know. I don't know what other pastors do. For me,
You're more involved.
I am more involved in this.
You're much more involved.
Worship is such a major...
Much more involved.
Okay. It is a major component of the for us, our Sunday morning gathering. I think there has to be intentionality behind it. But on top of it, I just love worship music. I really do. If I could sing, I probably would have been a worship pastor, but I can't sing. Wow. I know I have zero musical ability. I can't play an instrument. I can't sing.
I didn't leave y'all anything. And what I can't figure out is how all of y'all are runners. You didn't have any running parents.
I don't know that either. But I'm excited about this podcast episode. If you're new and you're joining us, maybe this is your first time. Maybe you're a worship pastor and you're like, ooh, this one caught my attention. My name's Jess Rayner. I'm here with my dad, Thom Rayner. And this is the Church Answers podcast. We do our best to ask relevant church questions and then do our best as well to answer those questions. This is why it's called the Church Answers podcast. We cover anything and everything that has to deal with the local church. And today we're going to be looking on a topic specifically with worship styles, why we can no longer define worship styles. Before we jump into that, we want to take a moment and thank one of our sponsors, Cheney and Associates. If you don't know them, go check out CheneyAssociates.com/churchanswers.
30-minute meeting with them will tell you a lot. Go do that.
They are an accounting firm. So if you've never heard of the name, they are an accounting firm specific for the local church. In fact, that's the only type of accounting they do. They work with over 1,100 different churches across the United States, all churches, all sizes, all budgets. They want to help you with your accounting and bookkeeping needs. Decades of experience. They understand what it means to be in ministry. They will help you gain clear financial insights to guide your ministry decisions. So go 30 minutes, get a phone call on the books, go to their website, go to CheneyAssociates.com/churchanswers and see what they can do for your church. They love the local church. That's why they started a podcast called the Church Advisory Podcast, where they talk about local church administrative and financial matters. But today we're talking about worship styles, why we can no longer define worship styles. And you think this is a bit of a blessing. Is that right?
I do think it's a bit of a blessing because think about that song. The 60s had ended. 1970 had ushered in. I still got vague memories of 1970, but after 1969, my worship knowledge, or my music knowledge began to wane. But there was a song that started off like this: War, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
And for all of our podcast listeners, when you're wondering why I can't sing, now you know.
Well, Edwin Starr sang that song 1970, and it was a Vietnam protest song.
I did know that. I knew that, probably because you've told me.
It's probably been in documentaries too. So
that and the war, what is it good for?
Absolutely nothing.
Kind of explains itself.
I can't remember the date. I should have looked it up in Amazon before I did this. But Elmer Towns wrote a book in, I'm going to say the 1980s, but I'm not sure. I shouldn't have even said that, called Worship Wars. Mm-hmm. And the premise of that book was, we've got worship wars, and here's what they are, and it's just a fact of life. I didn't like that. I didn't like the fact that it was a fact of life. And I want to tell you something. Although there's always been discrimination and some type of sense that I know what's better than you do when it comes to music, and particularly worship music, we had never seen the battles that we saw with that self-centered, self-indulgent generation called the baby boomers. They messed it up. Their whole idea that worship is to serve me instead of us to worship God, it's anathema. And it brought in a movement that is just repulsive, and it's fighting over worship.
Mm.
I don't
You're
like
really
it.
hard on your generation.
My generation has a lot of problems, and I'm not immune from them myself. But they're the preferential generation. You know, they're the hold the pickles, hold the lettuce. Special orders don't upset us. All we ask is that you let us have it your way generation.
So you're saying that this really came onto the scene and with your generation, which what era would you put that? What decade?
I would say that it peaked in the 80s
Peaks in the
and
80s.
continues in the 90s. We began to see very clear signs of it in the 70s because it was picking up the 60s music, you know, that was coming in now to the 70s. Peaked in the 80s, continued to show its ugly head through the 90s, and even in the turn of the century, it continued to. It's waning, and it's way down from where it used to be, but it needs to be even more.
Okay. And so these worship wars, you're talking about just people wanted different styles of worship, which we're talking about why we can no longer define worship styles. But obviously, there are terms out there. There's traditional, there's contemporary, there's blended. You're saying no one can precisely define them anymore. Explain that.
One person's blended, it's another person's contemporary. One
Mhm.
person's blended, it's another person's traditional. One person's traditional is a your grandmother came to one of your first services at the church at Spring Hill. And I said, how'd you like the music? Well, they were doing really good with the hymn until they added some words, some music to it. I don't know which, hymn was added to, improvised, but she just had a certain way. She wasn't a boomer, but she certainly was
Mhm.
opinionated. So how do you define it? So much of what goes on in where I'm in church, sometimes I feel like this is what used to be the traditional. Traditional used to be defined in many sectors as is coming out of the hymn book, the
Right.
hymnal.
Yeah, I was going to say it was the type of song.
Yes.
You had hymns and you had worship. Yeah, that's typically I think how you defined it. You had worship songs and you had hymns. They were done that way, and so you had your traditional, which was hymns. You had your contemporary, which is CCM, which is worship songs, and then they say blended, where you sing both types of songs in one service.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now, and I would say this is why you can say you can no longer precisely define it. I think we've seen a resurgence of what I call ancient hymns. There's a lot of modern hymns as well. I can think of the Gettys. They write a lot of modern hymns, but some of the ancient hymns have seen a resurgence within a contemporary style of music. So it's no longer by song type; they've all blended together, and so the style so even then you could say, well, it's how do you define it by instrumentation? Well, we have guitars at our church. Well, you might have a church that plays guitars, but it's going to be a completely different style of worship. And so I've seen that even with some other churches. It's I was like, oh, we do drums and guitar. We're contemporary. But if you go listen to the music, you're thinking, I
You're
would
not
not
contemporary.
define this as contemporary. So
Yeah.
it was from we define it by song choice, then you could begin to define it by instrumentation. But the reality is you can't do that anymore. It's it's like, well, what is it? So I don't know if we have an answer to that besides you can't define it anymore.
I don't want to say they're blended because then you're actually defining it as blended worship, but they are coming together.
Yeah.
And hymnody, both ancient and current hymnody, and different types of contemporary music. I mean, some of the let's say early 70s contemporary music, oh my gosh, it was terrible. And the theology behind it was just abysmal. I mean, obviously written by boomers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm trying to think even like song length, maybe an indicator today. I do think, some of maybe the more traditional churches will sing shorter songs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, but even then you can't be a hard and fast rule on that.
Well,
I know we sometimes sing 6-7 minute songs. It has a little bit more repetitiveness, but some people don't like. But I think sometimes repetitiveness can be really good. There's a reason you sing holy, holy, holy. And so it's all like, how do you define it? You can't. And so that's why that's the whole premise of this what we're talking about. We can't define it. Now, you talked about the boomers.
Mm.
And so that's
Self-indulgent, self-serving, me first generation. Born between 1946 and 1964, 76 million, of which 72 million are self-indulgent.
well, we're so thankful for those 4 million. So the boomers, though, the generation is fading. And so also along with that is their preference-driven approach to ministry. So again, we're trying to figure out why we can't define worship styles anymore. One, is it traditional? Is it contemporary? Is it blended? That, and then the preference-driven, which again, you are very, very passionate about with the boomer generation, that's fading.
Yep. And when you have a preference-driven worship service, Jess, you have a worship service that's directed itself instead of God. And you're listening and saying, do I like this music? And you're critiquing and you're saying, what's good? What's bad about this? And if you're doing either one of those, you're not worshiping. And you know what I've learned in my old age and even before then? Some of the songs that I never thought I would like, if my heart is right, I can truly worship.
Sure.
And that's the boomers brought in all these preference-driven thoughts, preference-driven ideas, preference-driven modes. And it was awful.
Yeah. So because of that, we're talking about how do we no longer define it. The boomers are fading. And so that as along with their preference-driven approach to ministry is fading. The third thing, though, why we can no longer define worship styles is platform music is yielding to congregational participation. I love this. One of my favorite times of the worship service is when I get to hear the voices of my church family. And we're very intentional about it at the Church of Spring Hill. We have heavy instrumentation. We do. We know that. We run tracks. We have lots of things that provide volume and provide how do they describe it? Fullness. That brings fullness to the room. But intentionally, we back everything off so that you can hear the voices. And by the way, and I tell people all the time, sitting on the front row is the best seat in the house. Not because, as we talked about recently, you pay to get there. Yeah, we're not renting out pews.
Our chairs. You
get to hear the voices. Oh, true. My goodness. I absolutely love it. So there's been a shift over the years. You talk about platform music. That's more, concert style.
Concert style, exactly.
That's more performance driven.
Mm-hmm.
That is yielding to more congregational participation. So how have you seen that in other churches?
I am seeing exactly what you are saying. Some are doing it with intentionality. Some are doing it by emulation. But I'm seeing more and more of the concert style beginning to fade away. It was very big in the mega churches. Of course, the boomers created, for the most part, the mega churches. There were a few before it, like Moody and others. But the mega church was the big audience for the big performance and the performance platform driven type of music. I see that fading away, and I see a lot more intentionality about worship. I see a lot more intentionality about a lot of things. Look, one of the reasons I'm optimistic is this worship trend. One of the reasons I'm optimistic is the evangelism trend that I'm seeing. And you're talking about moving away from self to God. Worship does that. Evangelism does that. Reaching your community does that. That's why I love our partner.
Yeah.
Upward.
Yeah. I want to take a moment and just thank them here. Upward.org/runcoach is where we want you to go. We want you to partner with Upward Sports, in particular, with running. They can help you and your church offer a 5K challenge for your community, for your church, for your community. They will do everything you need. All you need is one passionate leader. That's it. One passionate leader. You don't even need a facility. You can do a church parking lot, and you can offer a 5K for your community. You can build stronger connections. Upward does an amazing job of come along side of your church and helping you reach the community through a 5K challenge. So go to upward.org/runcoach and see what they can do for you.
Hey, let me just say one thing about congregational participation.
Right. Okay.
I used to have a bad attitude about Church of Christ because they had most of them were not instrumental. Now, I'm not going to get into theology or anything like that, but I'm just going to talk about their mode of worship. I'm hearing more and more people going to Churches of Christ right now because it's all a cappella, and they just hear each other.
What popped in my mind when we were talking about this is the Passion 2024 conference. Just if you type in Passion conference moment, there I think it was about 20 minutes where it was just voices, maybe slight instrumentation, where they just sang Agnus Dei for 20 minutes. Even watching it, and these Passion is for young. I mean, it's. I'm too old for Passion. I mean, maybe not. Be like, no, you could go. It's designed for young adults. I think they're open to anyone, but it's predominantly young adults. 20 minutes they were singing Agnus Dei, and I absolutely, like, even watching it, like, there's a drive. I think it goes back to the hunger for truth and the hunger for what the church is. It's not performance driven, it's congregational, and so that is influencing worship styles as well. I'm even seeing it in the worship songs that are coming out. There's parts where you even listen to the modern worship songs, they are backing off with instrumentation in the songs to create that congregational moments. I absolutely love it. It's so good. I'm excited about that. As I mentioned, I love worship. Have I told you that?
I know you love worship. I'm glad you love worship. I was at your brother's church. I'm always going to be most of the time I'm going to be at the Church of Spring Hill with Jess. Some of the time I'm going to be at West Bradenton Church with Sam. Occasionally I'll be visiting with Art and I'll go to his home church too. But most of the time between those two. And I was at Sam's church. I just lost a good friend. And I mean, tragically, and some of the details about it, Jess, and still heavy on my heart. And I believe she died on a Friday. I can't remember. I think that's right. And this was the next Sunday, 2 days later. And we're in the worship service, and we went a cappella during a portion of Holy, Holy, Holy. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I saw her in heaven. I saw her no pain. I saw her no worries. Mm-hmm. I saw her life whole. And it just, it was, I was thinking about my friend, but also I was just overwhelmed with the holiness of God, and it just made me look at heaven. Yeah.
And I think that's obviously, I mean, our worship is Christ-centered, and so anytime you can have those moments, and congregationally, it's super, super powerful. We're looking at different reasons why we can no longer define worship styles. The normal terms of traditional and contemporary blended, it's harder to define them. The boomers and their preference driven is fading. We're seeing the less performance driven, more congregational participation. And something I mentioned earlier too, kind of bringing this back around, is hymns are being rediscovered and repurposed. Mm-hmm. I love it. I mean, talk about the theology and hymns. I mean, we sing hymns at the Church of Spring Hill. We'll sometimes put a little bit modern adaptation on it, either through some kind of instrumentation. We'll even do some tags onto some hymns, or sometimes hymns will tag onto other songs. But we love that. So we may not sing a full hymn. We may sing a verse or two, or we may sing a full hymn, but add tags within that. But you're seeing that grow. Just this idea that they're being repurposed and reused. I think it's great.
Yeah, I think the Gettys are responsible for a large portion of this move, not all of it. Mm-hmm. Their modern hymnody, they're bringing it back into the church. Yeah. But In Christ Alone was a pivotal hymn that has moved a lot of churches in that direction. Not by itself, but Keith is such a goofy guy. I look at him and I just say, Keith, I just have trouble thinking that you and Stuart wrote In Christ Alone. Now, when Kristen sings it, I can see that. But you're so goofy.
Oh yeah, and they just had a new one come out too. I'm trying to remember what it was. It's gonna bug me. Maybe I'll find it before the end of the podcast. Yeah, I love it. They have a new one out as well. But yeah, we're seeing this. It's the rediscovering, the repurposing of hymns, which is why we can no longer say you are a traditional worship style. And again, all this is a blessing. The last reason why we here at Church Answers on the Church Answers podcast are saying we can no longer define worship styles is church compositions do not tend to be age focused.
Yeah, I'm talking with Mike Harlan some months back, and he said, we used to think about, all right, who is this going to reach? This is going to be a youth song, or this is going to be something that'll probably just appeal to maybe some of the older people in the church. I don't see that anymore. I just see people, composers, writing songs, writing hymns, writing choruses, writing everything that is in the worship service today, thinking, how does this help us worship, instead of being target focused?
Yeah. I think that's a major piece of it. It's, if you're talking about the whole boomer thing, it was trying to be preference to them, and now it's just like let's
get the focus off of the recipient and put it on the one who gives all.
Yeah, it's like someone should write a song called "I'm returning back to the." How's the song? Oh, how's it go? There's a song. I'm returning back to the hope of Jesus. I just totally lost it. That's my fault. So I love worship. And this is what bothers my worship team. They're like, oh, what's that one song? And I'm like, I'll give them 2 words and they have to figure out what I'm saying.
Name that tune.
Yeah. I had a moment. I totally lost it. So sorry about that. But it again, it's going back to the idea that the heart of worship. There it is. I'm coming back to the heart of worship. That idea of we're all getting back to the why we sing, and that's generational. And I do my best to remind our church that when we raise our hands in worship, we're actually locking our arms in mission. I think it's a powerful reminder of like we're doing this together. And honestly, as a pastor, my preference is not met in music. Like my song choice is not always there. Now, I obviously I typically will exercise veto power. I'll say, no, we're not doing that one. But if it was just Jess's worship set, it would look a lot different than what we sing on Sunday morning. Because of I'm using it from a shepherding standpoint. There are even times with a song choice that I'll say, we're not going to sing that this week because it doesn't fit our church. And so that's a key piece, is that it's not just no longer age focused. I think I hope more pastors are thinking, how can I shepherd through worship as well? I know I'm the lead worshiper. I think that Mike Harlan talks about that as well. The pastor's the lead worshiper. But all of it is we're coming together. I love it. I absolutely love it. So, well, this has been good. I like it while we talk about why we can no longer define worship styles.
Style focuses upon the worshiper instead of the one we worship. That's why we don't do it.
Let's end with that summary. Let's also end with thanking Cheney Associates one more time, one of our sponsors for this podcast. They are bringing decades of experience serving churches all across the country and helping with bookkeeping and finances. They are church accountants who speak your language and understand your mission. Go check out CheneyAssociates.com/churchanswers. They know stewardship matters. They know time is precious. They can help with both. Go just get a phone call with them and see what they can do. We're super thankful for them. We're thankful for their church advisory podcast. You can go look for that as well on whatever podcast app you're listening to, the church advisory podcast. Go see how they can help you with some church administrative and financial matters. Well, this has been good. Worship gets me ready for Sunday.
I'm ready too.
So I hopefully if you're listening to this, that you've gained some knowledge, in particular that you're going to continue to lead your church to, understand what the heart of worship is all about. And I think it's a good thing that we can no longer define worship style. So thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Church Answers podcast. We look forward to seeing you in the next one.
See you later.